Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kalen King. I'll be doing a few stories today, so if you like the video, please hit that like button or I will come after you. And the subscribe button would be appreciated, otherwise your family will be cursed for the next 1,000 years. And the notification bell, I'd appreciate that, thank you. And if you wondered what happened to my voice, well, keep wondering and enjoy the stories. I've always felt like I'm a little more sensitive when it comes to ghosts or spirits than your average human being. I can feel the energy shifts when I walk into a room or house that's usually confirmed by what seems to be activity later on. With that being said, I have stories for days. I seem to have so many encounters, I'm not sure if it's an attachment or if I'm just attracting spirits wherever I go. I was around 13 or so. My grandma had passed away and we moved into her house, and my room was in the basement. Now, whenever I visited before, there was always this uneasy feeling towards the basement, but I've always just brushed it off and chalked it up to being a stigma about basements being scary. So when we moved in, I was given the basement. I was unsure and uneasy as crap. I always felt like something was by the furnace and stairs, watching me and moving around. Occasionally, a light would be turned on and I'd see shadows here and there, but never really put much thought into it until one night I was dead asleep. I'm a heavy sleeper, mind you. Not much wakes me up during the night, but one night I was snapped awake suddenly by something that felt like it was in my dream, like something telling me to wake up. I look around because I'm smelling something weird, and less than 5 feet from me there's a small fire starting from a short in some wiring. I was able to wake my dad and consequently save the house from burning down that night. I can't help but think whatever was in that basement with me is to thank. Thought I'd share something interesting that happened to me about 15 years ago. Most won't believe me, but for what it's worth, I promise everything I tell you is 100% true and how it happened to the best of my memory. However, names have been changed. I was about 18 and I was hanging out at my friend Joanne's house with some other school friends. I can't quite remember how we got onto the subject, but towards the end of the evening, Joanne thought it would be fun to perform a seance. Joanne's and her family were from Cape Town, South Africa, had a deep-rooted interest in the spiritual, or at least that's what Joanne made it out to be. With the lights off and candles lit, we all sat around the table, with cards fanned out around the edge. Each card had a letter of the alphabet arranged A to Z, and a shot glass placed in the middle. Joanne starts speaking to the spirits in Afrikaans. I remember pulling a face and rolling my eyes. It was too dark for anyone to take offense. At the time, I was an insufferable, enlightened atheist teen dork. You know the type. Cringy 4chan edgelord who thinks any form of spirituality or religion is beneath me and my superior intellect. I never wore a fedora, but I was damn close. However, what was about to happen made me question everything. It started mundane enough. A few questions were asked, and the shot glass we were resting our fingers on started to move to and fro until eventually one of my friends asked the spirit if they were associated with anyone in the room. The shot glass moved directly towards me. Incredulous, I asked the spirit, "If you're associated with me, then what's my mother's maiden name?" My eyes fixated on the letters that spelled out her maiden name, Jones. But the glass started spelling out something different. First the glass went to T, then H, then O. I thought then it was bullshit, as it was spelling out something completely wrong. I was then struck by a horrific realization. When my mom was 6 months old, her biological father died of a heart attack, and a year after that she took her stepfather's name. I completely forgot this in the moment, as I was expecting the glass to read out the maiden name she had for the majority of her life, but it was actually spelling out her original maiden name of Thompson. It was a fact so trivial that I barely remembered it myself. It was something never talked about even within my family, as it happened so long ago. It would be hard to believe that any of my friends would know this esoteric piece of my family's history that occurred 20 years before I was even born, but nonetheless, somehow it was being spelled out right in front of my very eyes. Thompson. My school friends and I wouldn't talk about anything deeper than video games and girls at that age, and there's no way I ever mentioned this to any of them. It's not like one of my pot-smoking loser friends had a copy of my mom's birth certificate, and none of them had ever met anyone else in my family. There was literally no way anyone could have known this. Before I could contemplate this for too long or even ask any other questions to my ghostly associate, Joanne's mom came into the room and turns the light on, and with a thick SA accent shouts something like, "Bloody hell, Joanne, stop messing around with this silly crap," and put a definite stop to the proceedings. Of course, at the time I played it off as a prank, but the more I thought of it, the more my mind wanders. Did something actually paranormal happen that night? I know it's nothing dramatic or exciting. I didn't see an apparition or a cryptid, but unlike 90% of the shit you read on Reddit, this experience is actually true, and something to this day I can't explain. This event happened about 1981, and I would have been about 11 years old. My younger cousin Kathy was also visiting our grandparents and staying the night. We were in an upstairs bedroom of the farmhouse that was located right in the corner of a 100-acre working farm. Just beside the house to the east was what I called the old tractor road. I have heard this type of road referred to as a two-rut road. My upstairs bedroom window overlooked this old farming road, which was probably in use even before the old farmhouse was built. Right next to the house was a stacked wood pile and then 4 feet wide grass walkway. On the other side was a grandmother's 15-foot wide garden that ran parallel to the old road. So even in the dark, I could easily see the road since it was so close to the house. On the opposite side of the road was a huge 35-acre cornfield that at the time easily stood 5 to 6 feet tall. It was a warm summer evening and we were supposed to be sleeping by this time, but we were talking about music and our favorite bands. Being Canadian, she naturally liked the band Rush. My cousin and I began to hear a distant conversation between at least 2 people that was definitely coming from outside. We could also faintly hear footsteps on the two-rut dirt road. As conversation got closer, the footsteps also became louder. We slowly kneeled down at the open window and listened. It was probably around 11 o'clock or so, and our eyes were already well adjusted to the darkness, and we would easily be able to see what was happening just below the window. The conversation and footsteps gradually became louder, and we knew for sure we would soon see who was trespassing on our land. Maybe our grandmother would also hear this and appear with grandfather's shotgun, as she had done many times before when she thought there was a threat to our property. Grandma was no joke, and once grabbed a huge knife and told me to go get the front end loader. When I returned, she had already gutted a cow and had it ready to hang from the loader. Well, Grandma did not show up to save the night this time. The conversation and footsteps gradually became louder and louder. Then without my cousin or I seeing a thing, they slowly became quieter and eventually stopped. There was no possibility of this walking and conversation taking place in a cornfield because we did not hear the familiar, unmistakable sound of at least 2 people making their way through a tall cornfield. I should also add that we did not see a flashlight or lantern, we only heard the conversation and footsteps. I do not recall what the conversation was about, and I'm unsure if this conversation was understandable at all. We never saw anything or anyone. This probably happened over the course of maybe 2 minutes or so, but I have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours thinking back to this warm country night and what we were able to hear but not see. I cannot explain this event and can only describe it as my first of many paranormal experiences, including a full-body apparition. Reliving this experience made me realize I should reconnect with my Canadian cousin Kathy. For as long as I could remember, I've never been able to escape the paranormal. Whether it be the television turning itself on at night as a child or imaginary friends my older sister and I could both see for years. I've grown to become almost desensitized to anything out of the ordinary. Out of all the things that have come in and out of my current home, there's one being that's been here for as long as I can remember, and quite the odd one at that. For simplicity's sake, I'll refer to him as Old Man. He's often heard walking throughout the basement, mostly in the spare living room that connects to another spare room. He's not spoken a word to any of us, but he really seems to dislike my mother's best friend, as when she lived with us for a short while, he'd bang on the laundry room walls and she was alone in there and she'd swear up and down that he told her to get out. Nobody else had ever been told the same. Typically the most we'd get would be a whisper calling our names. And who knows if this was ever from him in the first place. So this was always perplexing to me. Personally, I think the old man is alright. He's been docile with my family and never moves things or bugs any of us. I've only seen him briefly here and there, but the description I have of him matches what everyone else in the house has seen of him. And everyone, except my mom's friend, of course, can pretty much agree that he's harmless. When my room was in that spare room connected to the basement living room, I'd often come home to an empty house after school and crash for a couple of hours while waiting for anyone to come home. Sometimes I'd be so tired from staying up too late and having to get up so early that I'd fall asleep with the lights on. And in those cases, I'd wake up 90% of the time with the lights having been turned off for me. Nobody in my family ever admitted to doing it. And my parents really wouldn't have been the type to turn the lights off for me to sleep, since they found my messed up sleeping cycle and daily naps to be frustrating. With both my siblings being gone most of the time around then, it was also unlikely they'd lie about not doing that for me. So I can only assume the old man was the one who'd help me with the lights. I've always wondered if perhaps he's some sort of guardian. Yet the way he acted towards my mom's friend contradicts that, since she's by no means a bad person or deserving of that. Though I can't even say for certain if the old man is the one who did that, since she never saw him when the walls would be banged on. When I was younger, I used to live half of the week at my ex-boyfriend's flat, we'll call him Christopher, in central Paris near a park called Les Bouteilles Chaumont in Rue Carducci. It was easier for me to stay in the heart of the city since I studied at the university from Monday to Friday. This guy and I used to have a mutual friend named Alice. Back in the days, the three of us slept in the same room and shared a very powerful relationship altogether. It was almost like a love triangle, but anyway, my experience is not about our personal story. Alice and Christopher are really sensitive people who felt energies and spirits. I never judged them since I experienced baffling situations as well, but hey, I want to stay a pragmatic person. But I still can't explain what happened these nights when Christopher and I talked while we were asleep. Alice listened and told us everything in the morning, right away. It happened a few times. I have no memory of these events. She was absolutely sure we were speaking in tongues. There's no doubt about that. The disturbing part? We don't understand and can't read Latin. She even took notes as we discovered some of the sentences were parts of the Bible. Some of them were related to Lazarus. While Christopher firmly believes in God and is a Christian, Catholic, I am not a religious person at all. Of course, I have studied and read the Bible and some other religious books, but I would not and cannot tell you entire parts by heart. As she is sensitive to this invisible world, she really felt it was something disturbing and unusual. I really want you to know this is 100% real and I'm not faking it. I know I often laugh and talk in the night while I'm fully asleep, but this Latin episode never happened to me again. There's always this stereotype about creepy legends and Latin, especially because religion is scary and often used in films and books to play with our deepest fears. Well, that's it for today's stories. If you enjoyed them, please leave a like, and in the comments, please tell me how your grandma would be with a shotgun. I know mine, well, there wouldn't be much of mine left since she's dead, haha. And also, please support my Patreon, I'd really appreciate that.
Who the hell are you?
Well, that's my cue, people. See you next time. Reliving this experience made me realize I should reconnect with my Canadian cousin, Kathy. Who the fuck is Kathy? Anyway, on to the next story. God damn.